In my recent video quoting Mahatma Gandhi as saying, "I like Christ, but I don't like Christians," I explained that the God of the Bible committed terrible acts, ordering massacres, killing innocent children, and threatening eternal torment, and that Jesus, as a human figure in the Gospels, was a good person and not cruel enough to be that God. And a Christian posted a comment under that video in response, which you can see on the screen now. It's a long comment, but I highlighted two key parts in it. He says, if God is to be God, He must be a God of justice. He cannot overlook wickedness. And so, in the Old Testament, you see the killing. In the New Testament, you do not see Jesus tell His disciples to kill. This is the first key part in his comment. And he also says, what did Krishna and the other Hindu gods do? Were they not violent? This is how some Christians defend the biblical God. They admit he ordered killings, but call it justice, and then try to make him look better by comparing him to other gods like Krishna. In other words, yes, my God killed innocent people, but other gods did worse. This is how they try to justify. This is not moral reasoning. This is an admission of guilt. And it's funny, he says, in the New Testament, you do not see Jesus tell his disciples to kill, which actually proves my point in the previous video. The human Jesus was not as bad as the God of the Bible. Let's be clear about what we are talking about. The Bible contains repeated explicit commands from God to commit acts we would call war crimes today. See on the screen examples of some of His cruel commands in the Bible. In the book of Numbers in the Bible, chapter 31, verses 17 to 18, He commanded the Israelites to kill every Midianite male child and every non-virgin woman, spare only the young virgin girls. Why do they have to spare young virgin girls? That's something I cannot explain in the video. Anyway, it's very clear in this verse that this God ordered Israelites to kill Midianite male child and every non-virgin woman. And in 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 3, He orders to kill all Amalekites, men, women, children and infants. He even ordered to kill children and infants. And in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 20, in verses 16 to 17, He says, leave alive nothing that breathes in certain conquered cities. These were not accidents of war or political decisions by kings. The text presents them as direct orders from God Himself, actions supposedly coming from a perfect loving deity. So when Christians acknowledge these killings, how do they defend them? They cannot deny they happened. They don't say the verses are wrong. Instead, they shift the focus away from the morality of their God and toward the actions of other gods. This is where the Krishna comparison comes in. What about Krishna? What about other Hindu gods? Were not they violent too? But the question is, if the Christian God is truly the one perfect source of morality, why compare Him to anyone else? If He is perfect, His morality should stand on its own. The moment Christians have to say, well, He's not as bad as the others, they have already placed Him on the same level as the other gods who are evil according to their own Bible. And that leads to a glaring contradiction in how Christians talk about their God. On one hand, Christians claim our God is perfect and He is love. On the other, they justify His mass killings as justice, while condemning similar violence in other religions as evil. Ordering mass killings does not reflect justice. It reflects the evil nature of the God described in these scriptures. And it clearly shows that this God was an invention of the people who wrote these texts, tailored to suit their own agendas and political purposes. That is why, when the New Testament authors wanted to market their God to a wider audience, outside their region, they rebranded Him through the figure of Jesus, compassionate, loving, welcome to all, and even teaching people to love their enemies. And here is where their own theology ends up disproving itself. Even in the New Testament, only the human Jesus displays compassion and love. The divine Jesus in the Gospels is still cruel because He says he will send those who don't believe in him to hell. So both the God of the Old Testament and the divine Jesus of the New Testament share the same cruel nature. And that is why Christians fail to truly follow the better moral teachings of the human Jesus. Which means the very point I made in my previous video is actually confirmed by this Christian who wrote this comment. In trying to justify the Bible's God, he only highlights the evil nature of the Christian God. So, when their best moral defense for killing women and children is other gods were worse, they are not defending justice, they are defending brutality. And the fact that they have to drag Krishna into the conversation only highlights the pathetic moral status of the biblical God.